I want to tell you a little bit about how I got started. I joined the Coast Guard back when I was 18 years old, maybe 19. And I was in the Coast Guard for 6 years. Now, originally, when I joined the Coast Guard, I was actually an art major. I was doing fine arts. Fine arts was, I was passionate about fine arts. It was something I was almost obsessed with it. I would spend hours just in front of a canvas painting. I did so many paintings. I won competitions. I was featured in the local newspaper in my town. Like I said, I won a scholastic national competition. I was really into it. I did a mural at my school. I was an art geek. Like, I was big time into art. It just makes sense to do art for a living. And so that's what I figured I'd do. I applied to a bunch of colleges. I applied to RISD, which is up in Rhode Island. I also applied to University of Connecticut. And there was another school up in Connecticut that I applied to. And then I also applied to this very small school called the Lime Academy of Fine Arts. So I applied to that as well. And I got accepted to two of them. I got accepted to one of the schools in Connecticut. It wasn't UConn, not University of Connecticut. It was another college up in Connecticut, or up in New England at least. And this smaller school, I was really into. You know, when you apply for these schools, at least with art, when that's where you're applying for. I remember going to the schools and going with my portfolio. I still have my portfolio from high school. It's this big, like, folder-looking thing with, you know, it's got all your artwork, your canvas, slides, everything. And I'm not gonna be too modest about it. I was pretty damn good. My specialty were portraits and still lifes. Classical art, not modern crap. It wasn't contemporary art. It was actually classic style. I was really into the Impressionists. I also was into some of the other periods of classical art. But I really resonated with the Impressionists. I really liked the Impressionists. You know, like Edgar Degas, Monet, Manet, Mary Cassatt. Those guys, like, really inspired me. Really like the pastels from Edgar Degas. I also like the sculptures from the marble sculptures from the Renaissance period. I was really into that as well. So, long story short, I figured that's what I wanted to do. And the two schools that accepted me, one of them appealed to me the most. Now, both of them gave me scholarships. Again, I'm not exaggerating. It's not like I'm being an asshole, patting myself on the back. No exaggeration. I got scholarships for both of them. They were very impressed with my portfolio. And you know, with my resume, essentially, you know, all the competitions I won. Like I said, I was obsessed with it, and I was freaking good. I was really good at it. So I went to the Lime Academy of Fine Arts because the Lime Academy of Fine Arts, the advantage of that academy was that it was a smaller school. The appeal of it was, one, that it was a smaller school, therefore the scholarship went a long way. Whereas the bigger college, was a bigger school, so the scholarship, obviously didn't go a long way because there was so much more, so many more expenses. And that's why the Lime Academy of Fine Arts, that wasn't the only appeal. The other appeal of the Lime Academy of Fine Arts, it was more of a classic curriculum. So the curriculum was more like fine art. I really loved it. It was such a nice school with emphasis on like actual hands-on. So I went ahead and I went to the Lime Academy of Fine Arts in Old Lyme, Connecticut. I remember it. Very good, nice campus, small, very small. And so I went there. And this might sound like an exaggeration, but the scholarship basically paid for all of the schooling. Again, keep in mind, it's a small school. So again, the scholarship went a long way. And so I went there. I was excited. I was thinking, I was this 18-year-old kid. Really, I was like 17 when I was planning it out. So it was this 17-year-old kid, 18-year-old kid, thinking, having these aspirations that I would paint every day. That's how much I loved it. And that appealed to me. Being in front of a canvas, doing portraits. I love the classic, realistic look of classic portraits. Another artist to look up is John Singer Sargent. John Singer Sargent, if you look him up, he has also a bit of a impressionist style, but man, like the classic undertone. It's basically classic realistic art with thick brush strokes. So you get the contemporary feel of the impressionist, but you also get the nice classic undertone of the Renaissance art. And it was just amazing. So if you look up John Singer Sargent, it's another guy I really like. I would spend hours. I was either painting or I was just looking at paintings. That's how obsessed I was with it. And so I went to the Lime Academy of Fine Arts, and I was disappointed. I was disappointed because my aspirations, what I thought, and I didn't know much about life. To give you a little bit of an idea too, I lived in my grandmother's house, old lady. My father wasn't around. My father passed away when I was like 13 or 12. My mom, I didn't live with my mom after the age of 12. So at the age of 12, I moved to the US. My mom stayed in Peru. So I came to live with my father. And shortly after my father brought me to the US, he died in a car accident. So he brought me to the US. I met my family. So my family on his side of on my dad's side of the family, I never really met them before. I'd seen them when I was a little kid, but who remembers that? And so he passed away almost right after he brought me to the US. Shortly after, he died in a car crash. And now I'm living with these people that I don't even know. And my father was not in my life for the majority of my childhood. I mean, I have a couple of memories of my dad when I was a little kid, but that's it. So I was looking forward to knowing my dad. And shortly after he brought me, he passed away. So I never had the opportunity to connect, get to know him. And out of all my family here in the US, he's the one I knew the most. I had at least a few memories with him, of him. But my other relatives, it was like I never met them before, because I probably met them when I was a little kid. There was a lot of friction between my father's family, and my mom. So this is why, I didn't really have this tight connection with my family when I came to the U.S. So my father passed away. So long story short, the reason I'm saying that is I didn't know anything about, I didn't have a father figure during that time that would tell me, hey, look, this is how things are. This is what college is like. I didn't have any of that. I didn't have what my son has now. I can talk to him. I can teach him how things work. I can advise him. I can like lay it out for him. Kids take it for granted. But I didn't have that. I didn't have my dad to do that. Not a sub story. Please don't feel bad. I'm just telling you, when I went to college, it was different than what I was expecting, because I ended up having to do really boring ass shit. I just was not into it. I was not into art history. Other than certain periods I was really into, I didn't care. I didn't give a shit about the cave paintings. I didn't care about the artwork and the really bizarre sculptures in all of these regions of the world as humanity began to develop into the modern world. I didn't care about freaking Picasso. I didn't care about contemporary art. I had no interest in contemporary art. The most contemporary art that I really cared about, again, was the Impressionists. But other than that, I could not care less about Jason Pollock, Picasso. I didn't care about pointillism. I didn't care about these weird-ass paintings that have zero meaning. It didn't resonate with me. There was no beauty in it, so I didn't really care for it. But when I went to college, because it was an actual college, I had to do all of that boring shit. And I did have classes that I enjoyed. I had sculpture classes, and it was like my favorite class, like actually doing sculptures, chiseling at stone and forming clay and doing paintings. It was amazing, but that was a small portion of college. The rest was just filled with things that I did not care about. And some of the other things I had to do is I had to do stupid contemporary shit. Like I remember one of the assignments was, we had to draw this ball, and it had to have like a shadow, a light cast on it with shadow. There was perspective. This is stuff that I had done in high school, right? I'd done this stuff in high school. I had a really good art teacher. I still talk to him. Awesome human being. I just absolutely adored him, loved him. But when I went to college, I had to do a lot of the same shit. And I was thinking, why are we doing such basic nonsense? So that really disappointed me. Fast forward, I finished the semester. I just could not do it. My immature, like 18-year-old mind could not handle it. My immature 18-year-old mind, young, stupid kid, didn't appreciate the scholarship. I didn't appreciate that. I didn't think about that. I was just so focused on how I felt at the moment. Now, looking back, I think to myself, man, I took that for granted. But also, looking back, I think the decisions I made because of that have led me to everything I have today. So I can't really say I regret quitting. That's exactly what I did. I left school. I left it. I just stopped showing up. Now, keep in mind, the scholarship paid for the school. It didn't pay for my living expenses. I didn't live at home anymore. As a matter of fact, when I was a junior in high school, my grandmother was already making plans for my room. She already knew. She was like, you have to leave as soon as you graduate. I already have plans for your room. You're not staying in this house. And I don't hold that against her. I think it forced me to get my shit together and grow up a little bit faster. So I love her for that. But that's that was the deal. As soon as I graduated high school, it was done. So I went to college. I paid for my own housing. There was no dorms because it was a small school, so I had to pay for my own housing. And for my food, I had to pay for my own food. And so I had to pay my own food, my own housing. I had two jobs. I literally had two jobs. And I was also going to college. And the problem wasn't the two jobs and going to school. The problem was it just wasn't what I was expecting. I was very disappointed, and so I left. And so when I stopped going, I realized, well, I have to do something. And I remember hearing a commercial for the Coast Guard. This is in Rhode Island, okay, not Rhode Island, I'm sorry. This is in Connecticut, okay? So Connecticut, up in New England, very close to the coast. And so I remember hearing the commercials for the Coast Guard. And I just thought, it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to look into it. It's like a government job. And the Coast Guard had just transitioned from the Department of Transportation to the Department of Homeland Security after 9/11, okay, because it was around that period of time. So it was now the Department of Homeland Security. It was now a branch of the military officially. So I joined. I didn't really have any aspiration. I didn't think, I'm going to join the Coast Guard. I'm going to make it a career. I was still a very immature 19-year-old at the time. So I went to boot. I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know anybody that had ever been to a boot camp. I didn't have these people that I could reach out to and ask. I had some church people that that I talked to, but they were older people, and they definitely helped me out. I'm not undermining the help that they brought to me when I was that age. They definitely gave me some guidance, and I'm eternally grateful for them. But I didn't have like relatives that would guide me. And it sounds like I'm complaining. I'm not. Okay, I'm very blessed, and I'm very happy with how my life is turning out to be. But long story short, I went to the Coast Guard, and I was still kind of lost. I was like, I don't really want to do this. I was a good worker. I mean, I was freaking squared away. I wasn't a shitbag. I was squared away. I did my job. I went above and beyond. But I didn't have this like trajectory for my Coast Guard career. So I just took it year by year. So my advancement was very slow because I didn't even know what I wanted to do in the Coast Guard, because I just looked at it as a job. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to do a boatswain's mate. I'm going to do a machinery technician. I'm going to be an electrician. I'm going to go into aviation. I didn't do it. I just showed up, did the things that I had to do, did my duties. I didn't have a roadmap. And so I advanced very, very slow. I was only there for 6 years. So by the time I reached the 6 year, probably about the 5 year mark, I realized, what am I going to do here? Because when you're in the Coast Guard, any branch of the military, you don't put your 2 weeks notice in when you're done with the job. If you decide, okay, I'm not doing this anymore, you don't put your 2 weeks notice. You have to wait for your enlistment to end, and as your enlistment is ending, you have to decide, am I going to extend my enlistment another 4 or 6 years, or am I going to leave? So the 6 year mark is very crucial for a lot of people, a lot of young people in the military. When you get to the 6 year mark, you're essentially figuring out what to do for the rest of your life. Because in the military, you can retire at 20 years of service. That's all you need, 20 years of service, and you get a retirement for the rest of your life. You get all the benefits for the rest of your life. So it's a very appealing proposition. And so I was thinking, okay, I'm at a 6 year mark here. If I extend my enlistment another 4 years, which I had to, right? It was either 4 years or 6 years. If I extend my enlistment another 4 years, that puts me at 10 years of service. And I only need 20 years to retire. So then you start thinking, well, if I do 10 years, I might as well do 20 retire, get a retirement check for the rest of my life and all the benefits. So this is the conversation that a lot of people, a lot of young people have when they're right at that 6-year end of enlistment where they now have to decide. So I decided to do something else. Now, I did a lot of growing up while I was in the Coast Guard. While I was in for 6 years, I did a lot of growing up. I got to see things. I got to see people, a lot more people. I got to work with a lot more people, people in a lot of positions of authority. I was put in positions of authority that I had to grow up. So the Coast Guard definitely was a good experience because it kind of kicked me in the ass a little bit. It got me out of the clouds and got me to think, shit, I really need to get my shit together, because you have to, right? You have to. The Coast Guard it's a small branch, so you can't just get away with being mediocre at this one little job. The Coast Guard, being a small branch, puts a lot of collateral duties on you. So you can have your specialty, but on top of having your specialty, you also have a bunch of other collateral duties that you have to do and perform to the top of your ability, to the best of your ability, every time you go to a new station. So there is a lot that you have to learn, and you're held to a very high standard. And I'm sure the other branches are the same way, but I can only speak for the Coast Guard. So because of that, I had to grow up, and it was a great experience. I'm gonna always be grateful for that. I met some great people. I met some not so great people. But in general, it was a good experience. I just didn't want to do that for the rest of my career. So even though I did have this conversation, by then I was already married and I had 2 little babies. So I'm at year 5 with 2 babies, 2 little kids, and my wife. My wife wasn't working at the time. She did work for a little bit, but then when we started having kids, then I was taking care of my family without her having to work. And so I started thinking, well, I kind of like working with my hands now. I kind of like actually being physical. And the art bug wasn't there anymore. I still love, to this day, I love art. I just don't do it as much. I'm not as obsessed with it as I was when I was a teenager. And so I was then trying to figure out what to do, looking for things that I could see myself doing, and dog training was one of those things. And how that came about was we adopted this dog towards the end of my enlistment. That was a nice dog, but she was a lot of dog for us, a lot of dog. And so I knew she needed to be trained. So I DIY'd the training. I watched some videos. I did a lot of troubleshooting. I did a lot of trial and error. And I realized that the dog got better. And as I got better, the dog got better. And so her name is Summer, or was Summer. And she was the first dog that basically showed me that this might be something that I could do. It was because of her. And I'll always be grateful to her. Unfortunately, if you're wondering, well, did you keep Summer? Unfortunately, I was not able to keep Summer. So we did our research. We really looked into it, and we rehomed her to a really good home, because we're just not in the position. Now, obviously, looking back at it now, I know I could have made it work. Now I have 4 dogs, and I'm fostering another dog. So technically, I have 5 dogs right now. My 2 older dogs passed away recently, old age. But now if you told me, hey, you got to move, but what are you going to do with these dogs? I'm going to be like, I'm going to make it work. These are my dogs. I'm going to find a way to make it work. Of course, I'm in a position where I don't need to worry about that now. But back then, it was very hard because, junior enlisted, petty officer in the Coast Guard, really not making a whole lot of money. I'm the only source of income for my family. I got 2 little babies. I'm about to leave military housing, so I'm about to be on my own. Everybody told me, don't do it. My father-in-law, everybody was telling me, my co-workers, They're all telling me, don't leave, you got a family, which I understand their concern, but I could not see myself doing another 4 years. It just wasn't in my heart. It's not something I wanted to do. So we took that leap of faith, and I say we because having the support of my wife, she believed in me. I had no idea how I was gonna do it. I took terminal leave. Like I was literally like stepping out of the Coast Guard, okay, ending my enlistment, no more paycheck, no more health care, no more housing allowance, no more of that, no more steady paycheck. Now I was on my own with two toddlers, and my wife who didn't work because she's taking care of my toddlers, right? So I'm doing this, I'm taking this leap of faith. I went to a dog training school. Again, like YouTube wasn't as big as it is today. So I didn't have like YouTube and Facebook to reach out to people and go, hey, is there any dog training schools that you guys think I could go? It was just trial and error. And so I went to this school. I called a few schools. I went to this particular one in Louisiana. That was my last duty station too. I was at an air station in Belle Chase, Louisiana. So as I was stepping out, so I was finishing the Coast Guard, I looked at this school and like, thank God it worked out. It was a good school. I had a great experience. I learned a ton. And after that, the rest is history. You know, I was at that school for 6 months. Then I went to work for a company, low experience, basically starting from the bottom, cleaning kennels, right? Then some training assistant position. And all of this, but while I have 2 little toddlers and my wife who didn't work at the time. So I made it work, and I had to make it work. And then I continued my education. Eventually I ended up with a contract, and thank God, like I knew the right people. I made the right connections, and some of these opportunities that I had no business having on my lap, they landed on my lap, and it was just a blessing. So everything that happened just led me to the experience that I have today, led me to the knowledge that I have today. And it was great. Like, I'm so happy with my decision. Okay, I do miss art every once in a while. I'm not nostalgic about art, but occasionally I will pick up an easel. I will put a canvas on the easel, start painting. My favorite medium is oil painting. And so occasionally I will do that. But overall, this is where I am. And I have plans ahead. My children are now, they're basically grown up. My daughter is 19 years old as of the filming of this video. She works for, she's a dispatch officer, so she takes the calls for 911. Very proud of her. She does amazing work. My son is graduating high school this year. So my children and this dog training trajectory we started, they were toddlers. My son was a baby. And now, like, my son is 18, my daughter is 19, and we've done well, and I owe it to dog training. Dog training really, it took care of us. You know, our clients, taking care of the dogs, training dogs, it really was, and is still a good experience. I'm always going to be grateful for that, and I have so many plans ahead. I've made this tremendous growth personally, as a business owner, as a dog trainer. And so I have these plans that I'm already executing, that I'm implementing for the next 5 to 20 years. And who knows, maybe 5 years from now, I'll be updating on a different video, maybe a different platform. But yeah, overall, I'm blessed, and I love dog training.